We have all kinds of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at today. In the rumor mill, we're taking a look at Patrik Laine. Is a trade getting closer? It looks like teams like Carolina Hurricanes, Anaheim Ducks, and the Montreal Canadiens are kind of the front runners here, and there's a lot of talk about Montreal after the moves we've seen to make today, that what they might be offering. We have some signings today, including the Habs signing a couple defensemen, signing in New Jersey. We have Dustin Wolf, Ryan Lindgren. Of course, some news around Eric Staal announcing his retirement, as well as some rumblings around some other prospects in the NHL. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots of things to talk about here today. Let's kick things off first with the news that Eric Staal, of course, longtime NHL player, has officially announced his retirement. Which is no big surprise. He didn't play in the NHL last year. He did sign a one-day contract today with his original team, the Carolina Hurricanes, who drafted him, of course, second overall in this draft year. Went on to play a long time there, be very productive, very big part of their 2006 Stanley Cup victory. Signed a one-day contract to retire as a member of the Hurricanes. So that's officially done here today, and they've announced that they are planning to retire his number 12, which will go to the rafters sometime during the upcoming season. We don't know exactly what day and what game that's going to be taking place here as of yet. Eric Staal last appeared in the NHL for the Florida Panthers, not the season that just ended, but the one before, 22-23. Of course, joined there after they had hired coach Paul Maurice, of course, who he had history with. Staal had 1,365 total NHL games, over 1,000 points in his career, over 100 playoff games in his career, and including the 2006 Stanley Cup victory, which came with those Carolina Hurricanes. So certainly, a heck of a career. Staal's accomplished a lot. Of course, that Stanley Cup championship came in just his second NHL season. Outside of Eric Staal announcing his retirement, we had lots of other news here today. Longtime play-by-play commentator for the San Jose Sharks, former NHLer Brett Hedican, has officially left the booth after over a decade calling games for the Sharks, and he heads back to the Ducks, where he ended up finishing his career. But he's not going to be in the booth any longer. He's getting himself back on the ice, working in a player development role. So Hedican leaves the Sharks and goes back to the Anaheim Ducks. There is some rumblings around one of the first-round prospects of the 2024 NHL draft, and that's Vegas first-round pick Trevor Connelly. Some talk that he may be signing his entry-level contract and then joining the Western Hockey League to play junior hockey in Canada. As of right now, that's not confirmed, and according to Dave Pagnotta, the fourthperiod.com, he's hearing there's still likely that he's going to go the college route. I believe he had committed to playing with Providence is where he was heading. So right now, indications are that he's still doing that, but there is some rumors floating out there that he may go to the Western Hockey League instead. Of course, General Manager Kelly McCrimmon, lots of history in the Western Hockey League, so I can see why he'd have lots of connections there. Obviously, would think it's a good league for him to play in for his development as well. So we'll see what happens with Connelly. Indications are still going to college route, but that might be a possibility. We'll see. Also, a very unique opportunity with the new Utah Hockey Club. There is going to be a link that I'll put down in the pinned comment. If you are interested, if you're an analytical person or into the data side of hockey, but Utah Hockey Club has announced a summer analytics challenge with an opportunity to actually earn a part-time paid internship with the club this fall. Only guaranteed work for half of the 24-25 campaign, but essentially, and you're also allowed to work remotely too. So you don't have to move to Utah and move to Salt Lake City or anything like that to join the club in their offices, but you can work remotely. You can submit up to a 5-page presentation, kind of going through data and how you analyze it, and kind of go through and see if they feel you're somebody that is strong enough to work in their analytics department. So it could be a good opportunity for somebody to get their foot in the door. Obviously, all kinds of people always want to know, how could I get started? How could I get a chance to work with an NHL club? Or how could I work just even in media or anything like that? So when we see big opportunities, that, I certainly want to pass those along. So obviously not something that I am strong at or something that I would want to do. But if there's anybody watching this that has interest and you haven't heard of this, check out the link down below. You can submit your presentation and your information and see if you can be considered for that pretty cool, unique opportunity. As I mentioned, lots of signings today. Busy day in that world as well, with some big ones getting done. We're now completely done of all the arbitration cases. The last one would have been Ryan Lindgren of the New York Rangers, and they have settled on a 1-year deal. They avoid the arbitration hearing. So again, like I said, no more ARB cases. We only had the one actually go through the hearing, which was Spencer Stastny with the Predators. All other players were able to be resolved outside of those cases, which is for the best whenever possible anyways. But Ryan Lindgren and the Rangers agree on a 1-year deal, $4.5 million. That's pretty well in that range that we kind of suspected. I know I've seen some people say on a 1-year deal might have been under $4 million. But if you look at the AFP Analytics contract projections, which I know I'm not an analytics person for coming up with it myself, but I do review a lot of the tools that are already existing and out there. And I know when it comes to looking at what players are likely projected to get for contracts, they are very, I like their level of accuracy. It's pretty accurate in their depictions based on how they analyze the data, what they feel is fair. Sometimes it ends up being a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's pretty close most of the time. So based on their analytical data, that Lindgren contract is pretty much bang on. So $4.5 million, 1-year deal. I know, like I said before, it was unlikely he was going to get a long-term deal. They have some other players that need to get, that I think they would rank as a higher priority to get long-term deals for, including the most important, Igor Shesterkin, who's reportedly looking for a mega long-term deal with some big bucks for their all-star goaltender. So clearly they'll want to take care of that. Maybe even look at Alexis Lafreniere first as well. Lindgren, obviously, who plays an important role, plays a lot with Adam Fox, but based on his data and the numbers and everything, kind of suggests he should probably play a little bit less and maybe be more of a second pair type of guy. But there is lots to like about his game from the defensive side. He'll be a warrior right to the end in the playoffs and block shots and do all the dirty work that you don't often see be rewarded heavily for, but certainly goes well appreciated by the coaching staff and teammates. You're not going to get a whole heck of a lot of offense out of Ryan Lindgren, but like I said, defensively, not only is he good defensively, but he's willing to do the things that a lot of guys won't do. So that's where he earns his money for sure. But I do have concerns that over time they're going to be, tough to pay him much more than that kind of money. So his next contract could prove to be a little bit tricky unless they do find a way to move on from Captain Jacob Trouba next offseason, which is more likely. That could give them more flexibility and kind of make things a little bit easier for some other guys to stick around. Other signings today, we got in New Jersey. They've come to terms with young goalie Nico Daws. He gets a 2-year contract extension. So the restricted free agent goalie gets 2 years. The first year is a 2-way contract, but it's a pretty lucrative one. He gets league minimum $775 at the NHL level, $350,000 for the American Hockey League, and it has a total guaranteed amount in the contract of $465,000. That's very lucrative for a young goalie to play at the American Hockey League level. He appeared in 21 games last year for the Devils, but the numbers weren't phenomenal, but he did okay, I guess, considering the second year of the contract. It's a one-way deal. That's year 2. It's $850 at the NHL. It's one way. So of course, with Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen both being in the mix now, it's unlikely you're going to see much of Nico Daws this year, barring injury to one of those guys, or I guess there's always potential for other moves, but I would not think that it's likely that New Jersey will want to move Markstrom. Obviously, he's got trade protection. Jake Allen has some trade protection as well, and only has 1 year on his contract. After everything, all the change they've seen in the position, I would think that they're going to ride with those two guys being there for the year. Of course, they traded Akira Schmid as well, so Daws is kind of the bona fide number 3, kind of by himself on his own right now, and is still somebody that they view as having the potential to be the goalie of the future, or at the very least part of that tandem. So with Allen only signed for 1 more year, makes sense that year 2 of Dawes' contract is a one-way contract. So I would think if the plan goes well, that he would be the tandem partner with Markstrom in the second year. And where Allen won't have a contract, I suspect they'll probably move on. But at the same time, it's not a big money deal. If they feel Daws isn't quite ready yet, or they're not comfortable having him full-time in the NHL for whatever reason, if Jake Allen plays well, they could consider extending him for one more year or something too. This gives them some good flexibility with all three of their goalies, and it gives Daws an incentive to play well this year, earn big money for the AHL time he has to put in, and then hopefully be ready for the NHL full-time in one more season from now. Another goalie gets signed as well, a prospect goalie in Pittsburgh who leaves the KHL in Russia to join the Penguins in North America, signing his ELC, and that's Sergei Murashov, who gets a 3-year deal leaving the Locomotive team over there. He's 20 years old. He was drafted in the 4th round of the 2022 NHL draft. I think it's his 3-year ELC, so he'll be playing with the Penguins in North America. Don't expect to see him at the NHL level this year, but it should be an option in play in the American Hockey League. A couple of signings as well in Montreal, a couple of young defensemen, both getting 2-year contracts. To start with, Xhekaj gets a 2-year deal. He gets $1.3 million per season, and they also signed Xhekaj Barron to a 2-year contract extension at $1.15 million. So obviously with both those guys getting multi-year contract extensions, it's kind of looking at the number of D that they have in their system and are projected to be in the NHL, plus those who are signed now, kind of leading to more conversations about some movement, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. But the Habs, a couple of key signings. Both those contracts, I think, are very fair. Again, like I said, I rely a lot on AFP Analytics for contract valuation projections, and these are both very much in line with what they had projected for these two guys. So I think they're quite good contracts. The Calgary Flames today have also signed young goaltender Dustin Wolf to a 2-year deal. And of course, like we just talked about Markstrom, Markstrom was kind of the main goalie in a way that was preventing Dustin Wolf from being a full-time NHLer, but the 2-year contract still gives him a 2-way deal for the first year. So for the upcoming season, it's a 2-way deal, $850 at the NHL level, $275 at the American Hockey League level, with a guaranteed payout total of $375,000. So I don't think the expectation here is for Wolf to play in the American Hockey League. Really, I don't think there's really anything left there for him to accomplish. He's been a really, really good American Hockey League goalie for multiple seasons. I think he's definitely earned the opportunity to be full-time in the NHL. His time in the NHL last year that he did get, though, didn't go the best. And with the team kind of rebuilding, retooling right now, it does kind of make you wonder, it might not be the greatest team in front of him. So hopefully it doesn't stunt his development here and, or his confidence more than anything else. Obviously, you're probably going to see more grade A opportunities when the team in front of you is not playing as strong. But year 2 of this contract, like Nico Daws, is a 1-way deal, $850,000. So I think for the most part, I think you're pretty likely to see Wolf and Vladar at the NHL level this year. I guess if they get into training camp early part of the season, if they feel like Dustin Wolf's not playing well enough in the NHL, they have this, I guess, to save some money. But, he's also at a point to, I believe he's not going to be waivers exempt anymore. So that could be problematic too. So, there's all those things to factor in. But by year 2, he's definitely expected to be the starting goalie, would be the hope and expectation that he gets to. So we'll see how that goes. But lots of signings, of course, like I said here today in the NHL, lots of other news items. And of course, Patrick Laine continues to dominate the rumor mill. Lots of talk. Aaron Portzline, who is the Columbus Blue Jackets beat writer for The Athletic, has named 3 teams that he feels are the most likely landing spots for Laine to end up being traded to. He says Montreal is kind of what he says as the third team, is like the outside chance. He thinks Carolina or Anaheim is the most likely. But when you look at all the potential returns, I really think Montreal has a better chance than not to land him. Of course, we don't know exactly what all these teams are offering. But when you take a look at Montreal, after signing Xhekaj and Justin Barron to multi-year contracts, a lot of people now think a player like Jordan Harris is likely going to be the next young defenseman to be moved. Of course, you have Savard and Matheson as the veterans on that team. Matheson has 2 years on his contract. Savard has 1. I don't think they're going to move Mike Matheson. I think they really like his leadership. He played really well last year. He was one of the top players on the team. He's making a very fair contract. He's playing in an area that's kind of like home to him as well, obviously from the area. And he's just a really good character person to be around those young D. You need some of that. Now, David Savard's got 1 year on his contract. I think with Montreal not really expected to be a playoff team this year, I would think that Savard is likely going to get moved sometime during the campaign before the deadline to a team that's going for the playoffs and wants to add some more good defensive depth. Savard is a player that's obviously a little bit older than he used to be, not quite maybe the player he was 5-6 years ago, but there's still lots to like about his game. Defensively, he's got lots of good experience, good blocking shots, just did a lot of the dirty work like we talked about before with a guy like Ryan Lindgren. Not the exact same kind of player, but, this kind of plays a similar style of game. So at the same time, there's definitely going to be interest in his services by the end of the season, by the deadline, for sure. Now, of course, if they move Savard throughout the season, that leaves Matheson being the main veteran. Then, of course, like I said, you have some other guys that are signed now, right? So you got Xhekaj, you've got Barron. They don't have a lot on the right side as well. But then you have guys that are still coming into the mix. You still have Reinbacher. You still have Laine Hudson, who hasn't really had a full crack at being a full-timer yet. And then, of course, you've got Logan Mailloux in the minors, who made some good strides last year as well. So you've got, like, say, 3 really good prospect defensemen that have not really even tipped their toe in the NHL yet. And then you've got the other guys that are already there besides the ones that we just mentioned. You still got Jaden Struble. You still got Jordan Harris. You got Caden Goalie, who is going to be a solid top 4 defenseman as well. I know a lot of Habs fans see him as being a top pair. I'm not sure. Either way, he's definitely top 4, regardless of what you think. I think that's pretty fair to say. So, there's just too many. So for a team like Montreal to offer Jordan Harris and a pick for Patrick Laine, I think would be a pretty good offer. Now, there's been some conflicting reports. We had seen reports before, like last week, suggesting that Columbus was going to want picks and prospects, which would favor a team like Montreal. But Aaron Portzline is now saying that he believes that Don Waddell wants a roster player back, that he wants to take a player who can play in the NHL right away. So, Harris is... Because is he a prospect? Kind of, sort of, but not really. He's kind of getting to that point where he's played enough and old enough that he's not really a prospect anymore, but he's still young enough that a lot of teams would probably be interested in adding his services, right, to get a nice, good young player to the team. So at the end of the day, he's just a bit older than some of these guys, played a little bit longer in college, and certainly, a good piece that the Jackets or other teams might be interested in. So to me, that's a good offer. And I that's why I think Montreal stands a better chance to get Laine than other teams. Like, look at Carolina. Like, Carolina would have a difficult time pulling this off. Now, if they want to take Kotkaniemi in the trade, that would make things a lot easier. But we know that the Jackets' first preference is to not retain money. Carolina right now has just over $6.5 million in space, but they have to sign Seth Jarvis. Seth Jarvis is probably going to be able to make that much or more. So the available space they have might not even be enough to get Jarvis done. So that alone, you need to probably make a move. Now, that's going by what Puckpedia says. I think they already have a player or two on the roster they could probably demote and create a little bit extra space. Maybe that 6.5 can become closer to 7.5. They can probably figure out getting Jarvis signed and being cap compliant, but it doesn't really give you any chance to take on another contract, let alone somebody making in that $8 million range that Patrick Laine is. So obviously, that's a lot of money to absorb without salary retention. If they trade Kotkaniemi, okay, well, that's, a big enough contract. You're getting there. You're about just over halfway, right? So it's going to have to be Kotkaniemi and something else to make it work. So I don't know that Carolina can do this without Carolina taking back multiple pieces that both teams may not be thrilled about. I just think it's going to be, I think he'd be a great fit there, and there's no doubt. I've said all along that they're a team to watch, but I think Carolina's going to have more work to do to figure out making it work. Unless they offer a bigger piece and Carolina gets Columbus to retain money. If they can talk Waddell into eating some of that contract and taking Kotkaniemi or something along those lines, then they'll get a way to get this done. Otherwise, I don't know. He may not be thrilled with that. So then there's the Ducks. Now, the Ducks don't need salary retention at all. They have more cap flexibility than any of these guys and have the option to take it on that full contract. They have lots of young pieces that they could offer, so including players who have some NHL experience. Like I know Portzline had recommended or suggested, not really recommended, but suggested a trade might include a guy like Urho Vakanainen. So another young defenseman, former first-round pick that could go to the Jackets. So it kind of boils down to what Don Waddell and the Jackets like more. So he thinks Carolina and Anaheim, with Montreal kind of being a little bit more of a wild card in all this, but still a team that has a decent chance. I don't know. Personally, I like Montreal's offer probably better than the other teams. I think Carolina is too complicated. They're going to have to take more pieces that they may not want to, salary retention, whereas Anaheim and Montreal, a little bit more flexibility. And Anaheim has lots of cap space that they can work with. But to me, I think if you're looking at the offers, I would take the Habs offer unless the Ducks come and take an offer something better. So we'll see. Obviously, this is not necessarily imminent right now, but things are definitely reportedly heating up. Conversations ongoing, and we'll see. And after the, like I said, after the Habs signing Xhekaj and Barron today, a lot of people are suggesting that Harris is becoming more expendable and could be the guy that they use to try to get this young forward that they've been rumored to be going after here for some time. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and the latest updates here for trade on Patrik Laine in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.